Welcome back to Stand with Kelly and Nikki Tshibaka. This is where courage is contagious and cowardice comes to die. You're with Dr. Ben Carson. Dr. Carson, I still remember your extremely bold and not so politically correct speech at the National Prayer Breakfast. This is like a decade ago. So you make history this day when you're standing on stage, supposedly giving a nice, cushy speech, but instead you take on all of the political problems of the Obama administration with President Obama sitting right next to you, looking extremely uncomfortable. It was the best. So I wanted to ask you, what led you to give such a speech? I've never heard the story behind the inspiration for this.
Well, first of all, I was quite shocked when they asked me to be the keynote speaker for the Presidential Prayer Breakfast, because I had been the keynote in 1997 when Bill Clinton was president. I wasn't aware that anyone had ever done it twice, but some research demonstrated that there was one person who did it twice, and that was Billy Graham. So I said, that's pretty good company.
Yeah.
So I agreed to do it, but I didn't know what I was going to speak on, and they kept calling me saying, what are you going to speak on? Because President Obama needs to prepare a response. I said, I don't know. And I really didn't know until the morning of the speech. And then it was crystal clear to me. And after that speech, everybody was saying, you should run for president. And I said, these people are crazy.
There was even a national headline about it, Draft Ben Carson for President.
That's right, in the Wall Street Journal. And I just said, if I just ignore these people, it'll go away. But it didn't go away.
No, it didn't.
Every place I went, there were people with placards and things, run, Ben, run. I had over 500,000 petitions in my office. It was ridiculous. So I finally just said, Lord, I don't want to run for president. But if you really want me to, you have to give me all the things that a presidential candidate would have. A Rolodex with all the important contacts, an organization, and a lot of money. And I said, I have no intention of developing those things, so you'll have to give them to me. Next thing I knew, they were all there. And the organization was raising more money a month than the RNC. So I just put my heart into it. And it was a wonderful experience, because as I traveled all over the country, to the smallest little hamlets to the biggest towns, I really was impressed with the fact that most Americans have common sense. What they lack is courage. And what we've got to instill into people. Most people have the correct beliefs, but they're afraid to say anything because they don't want to be called a nasty name. They don't want to be canceled. They don't want to impact their families. But you really cannot be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave. And you've got to be willing to stand up for your belief system. And that's what I'm always willing to do. And even if it does bring about some degree of persecution, what is that against the backdrop of eternity?
That's some great perspective to have that broader view of things, and recognizing that, what we do, to echo the line from Gladiator, echoes into eternity, something to that effect, what we do today. I'd like to pick up on that point, Dr. Carson, about courage. And specifically, if we could shift to the discussion a little bit to the Black community, we are seeing a groundswell. Another way to put it, I guess, would be an awakening within the Black community to the reality that leftist policies have done more to hurt them than to help them. That the Black community, we've actually been hurt more by leftist policies, like, for example, the defund the police movement and other things. So the Black community is beginning to realize that leftist ideas, leftist policies often aren't working or helping them. But some of those folks are hesitant to speak out and say, hey, you know what? I actually am beginning to count myself now as a conservative or a Republican, because they've seen how particularly vicious the left can be to members of the Black community who begin to raise their voice and say things that are oppositional to leftist perspectives and policies. I mean, they've been going after Justice Clarence Thomas for 30 years. So then you have another group of within the community that recognizes, you know what, these leftist policies aren't working, but I'm not sure conservative policies are necessarily the answer. So I'm wondering what you would say to those two groups of people. The group that's like, I really think I'm a conservative or a Republican now, but I'm too afraid to move forward and do something about it or act on it. And the group that's still kind of on the fence about conservatism and those policies as opposed to leftist policies, but who know, I'm not really seeing how the left can help me anymore.
Well, it's interesting. For the left, the only thing worse than Satan is a black conservative. I mean, they just cannot abide that because they need that part of their constituency to pull off victories. And what's happening now in the black community is people are starting to become aware of history and who have been the people who have really been against them and who have been the people who have promoted them. And as they're seeing that, they're reinterpreting things. Also, during the previous administration, during the Trump administration, people were able to see some real tangible benefits, things that actually made a difference. Opportunity zones, development of some of the places that were not well cared for, HBCU funding. It showed that there was an administration that actually cared about what was happening to them. The home ownership for blacks increased substantially under the Trump administration. And, when you talk about the wealth gap, the main thing that is involved is home ownership. The net average worth of a renter is $5,000. The net average worth of a homeowner is $200,000. That's a 40-fold difference. It makes a huge, huge difference. And also, I try to get people to not buy into the propaganda that things have not gotten any better for black people. They have gotten immeasurably better just in my lifetime. And, I talk about this in the book that came out last year, Created Equal, in which when I was a 6-year-old, I remember going to Chattanooga, Tennessee, and seeing the whites only and colored only signs. Well, in this same lifetime, you see black admirals and generals and CEOs of Fortune 500 companies and university presidents and heads of foundations. We've had a black president. I mean, give me a break. To say that we haven't made tremendous progress is foolishness. Doesn't mean that we've reached nirvana and that we don't have more progress to make. But, I think we should build on our progress rather than build on the negative things that have happened. When you look back at our history as a nation, there's been a lot more good stuff than there has been bad stuff. But people sometimes don't want to look at the good stuff, don't want to look at all the opportunities that have been provided for people. And if you can get people to believe that they are victims, then they are victims.
Building on what you just said, you talked about progress and our history and how more of it was good than bad, and we have more to celebrate than to critique, and we can learn from that history and build off of our mistakes and continue to progress. Looking into future history, what impact do you hope to leave on future generations, Dr. Carson? How do you hope to be remembered? I mean, there's so much that we could remember you for, right? Your work as a neurosurgeon, your work in politics now, your work in education and policy in the private sector. How do you want to be remembered, and what do you hope to leave for as a legacy for the future?
I would hope to be remembered as somebody who had a very, very strong belief in God and tried to live a life that was consistent with God's will and would go wherever that would take you. He opens doors, he closes doors, But as long as you're willing to follow the lead, you're going to do well. And also as a person who likes to emphasize common sense. You know, we're made in the image of God. He gave us these amazing brains. And they're not just to hold our ears apart. You know, he wants us to use those things. Your brain can process more than 2 million bits of information in 1 second. I mean, that is an amazing computer. And if you program it the right way, it's almost limitless, the things that you can do. You know, you hear some people say, well, I'm not good at math. That's not true. Everybody's good at math if you program them the right way. If you put the right elements in there and you build the blocks sequentially, it's just like reading. Reading is not difficult if you know all 26 letters, but if you only know 21, you still know the vast majority, but what are you going to be able to read? You're going to quickly say, I'm not good at reading. Add those 5 letters in and all of a sudden, voila. And, you know, we need to take that kind of positive philosophy into our teaching.
Wow. Well, we're gonna remember you certainly for your faith, and it's clear that your faith is what drives you, and we really appreciate that about you. I mean, it's informed every aspect of your life and service, and it's an inspiration to all of us who've watched your life and are learning from your life. We really appreciate all that you are, Dr. Carson, and all that you've done for our country and what you're doing for our kids right now. Thank you. We will be back, Kelly and I, to talk about this amazing discussion with Dr. Ben Carson, everybody. So don't go away. Make sure, though, to get on his website for the American Cornerstone Institute, americancornerstone.org, americancornerstone.org. Hit that subscribe button while we're on break, and we'll see you on the other side. Stand by.